I wrote Breaking Free from Broke because I was frustrated with the sentiment from the current and future generations, which is there's no hope for me. Inflation, the boomers, the economy, the president, the housing market, the price of whatever. It's not possible for me to live the life I want to live.
And I would say moving away from your comfort zone is a life hack,
Oh, there it is.
right?
Reveal the shirt reveal. That was
The sure
amazing. What a life hack in and
it's a
of
lot,
itself.
right? Getting out of debt is a life hack because to say, okay, getting out of debt to me now is more important than keeping up with fashion, than worrying about what other people think. Then once you make one of those big decisions, they're life hacks.
I like that mentality.
So, all right. So, tell me a little bit about you. First of all, tell me why you wrote the book. What?
I wrote Breaking Free from Broke because I was frustrated with the sentiment from the current and future generations, which is there's no hope for me. Inflation, the boomers, the economy, the president, the housing market, the price of whatever. It's not possible for me to live the life I want to live. And as I looked at the actual facts and reality, it wasn't inflation that was the problem. It was the lifestyle. It was the debt payments. It was the get rich quick. I want microwave success instead of crock pot it. That was causing a lot of these feelings of cynicism, really, which in my definition is negativity wrapped up in fear. And so I wrote this book to give a new generation hope that it's still possible for them. Whether you're 55 or 25, I believe the American dream is still alive and well. And yes, it's going to be harder than it was yesterday, but it's still possible if you're willing to work for it. And it's simpler than you think. So that's
Yeah.
really the heart of the book is to rise above a broken system and acknowledge that there are problems and acknowledge that the only solution that's worth its salt is the person in the mirror.
Yes. Absolutely true. Because you and I can be involved in the exact same seminar, program, accident, and we create our own interpretation of those events and walk away with a different perspective.
Absolutely. And so the thesis of the book is there's a system out there, this financial system that is designed to keep you broke. It's not all of your fault, but it's your responsibility. And then you can rise above the system, transcend it to live life on your terms instead of theirs, instead of the lenders. And so I the book has been giving a lot of people hope, and the reviews have been awesome to see people cutting up their cards, getting out of debt. 60-year-olds telling me, thank you for showing me it's not too late. 20-year-olds saying, thank you for helping me avoid all these traps out there. And that's really, it means the world to me to write a book under Dave Ramsey's umbrella and publishing house that carries on this message of the total money makeover, but with a lot of humor, a lot of research, and a lot of empathy for this younger generation.
I love that. I love that. All right. So let me ask you this. Going to put you on the spot a little bit here.
All right.
So here you are. You got the okay to write this book, like you said, under Dave Ramsey's auspices there or publishing house. Talk about doubts, fears, or was it like, nah, no problem, I got this?
Well, like any fun idea, at first you're so excited. Like, I'm going to write a book. It's going to be awesome. And then they're like, okay, go. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, there's no, I don't know how to do this. And so there's no one like walking with you to be like, all right, here's how you're going to set it up. Here's how you write a chapter. The longest I've written was like a blog. You know what I mean? So to write an entire chapter and then do that 13 or 16 more times was such an unfathomable task. And so I broke it down in a way that made sense to me. And it was chunk by chunk. And if I was stuck in one spot, I would move on to the other. And, we had the help of an editor to help sort of shape some of the ideas to go, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Help me distill this down to make it really connect. And so my goal was to make the complex simple, to make the unsexy stuff a little more sexy, and to really connect through humor and empathy to convince them that, this path to financial peace is is your best path. And that was a difficult thing to do. And over, I had ended up submitting, I think, over 70,000 words. And so I thought I got nothing to say. And then it turned out I had too much to say. And then you have to edit it down. And it's like, getting rid of your favorite child. They're like, no, I love that chapter, but you're right. It's not the most important thing. And so writing a book is not for the faint of heart. And I have mad respect for anyone who's written a book, whether it's sold one copy or 1,000. The fact that you even sat down and got something done and put it out there is so scary and difficult that you can't help but have deep respect for those people.
I agree. To your point, whether you sell one copy or the average is 200 copies or whatever, if you have the guts to put it online, to put it out there, right? Where people can buy it, the Kindle version or the audio version or the physical version, putting it out there where people can kill you, they can criticize it, they can, man, it's
Oh yeah.
that's the real deal. That's the real deal, and absolutely, thank goodness for people who decide to do it regardless. One of my favorite stories is I have a mutual friend, and so he was telling me about this situation where this stay-at-home mom had written a book, and she was she had no intention as what do you call it, like a lot of people, she had no intentions in putting it out there. She just wanted to write it for her family. That was the intention of her whole thing was, hey, this is my idea. This is a story that I've thought about for years. And so I'm going to write about it. And her sister was like, no, this is an awesome idea. You have to put it out there. And this went back and forth for I think a couple of 2 or 3 years. And she was like, no, no, no. And finally she relented and she said, fine, if you can find somebody who'll publish it, go for it. But I have no interest because I don't want to go through the pain of being rejected. So that book was called Twilight, which
Oh my gosh.
became a series of books and became a series of movies. And so the mutual friend who told me this story was their pilot. So in a very rare situation where a author makes a gazillions of dollars, they bought themselves a $10 million private jet that I had the pleasure of joining them on and things of that nature. And what a thrill to know that one idea was responsible for this change, this massive change in their life, but also but if for her sister twisting her arm, it would not have happened.
That's amazing, especially considering this was a non-fatal failure. If you put
Right.
the book out there and no one cares, you get a few mean comments. All right, you keep living. Now, the upside and reward, though, was we have a totally different legacy now because we took the risk and we were brave enough to put this out there to see what people think. And I think that's a great life lesson in there of, there's a few things that are fatal in life,
Right.
like jumping off a bridge. But if it's not fatal, go ahead and just take the risk of failure, as long as you do it with some wisdom and tact, especially when it comes to putting art in the world and your own creativity.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I think that back to the old adage about so many of us that live lives of quiet desperation, and it's because of that fear that holds us back from being ourselves, from putting things out there, from being creative, whatever you want to call it. At the end of our life, the things that we regret the most is the opportunities or the chances that we didn't take versus the ones that we did.
That's right. It reminds me, I think it's an Aristotle quote: to avoid criticism, do nothing, say nothing, be nothing. Like, okay, just don't get out of bed, don't leave the house, don't say anything. Well, that's no life. You're not really living there. And so I like your shirt says, life begins at the end of the comfort zone here. And so
That's right.
I'm gonna take the risk. And if there's a few mean comments, I'm gonna laugh about it. I just saw a
Right.
Seinfeld interview about his movie, the Pop-Tart movie, and he went, I can't wait to read the worst, most scathing review for entertainment. And it's because he's so self-aware, confident in his abilities, and he goes, I don't care. I'm proud of the fact that I made a movie. And so
Right.
your thoughts on it are irrelevant.
That's right.
And so I love that mentality. It's very encouraging to someone who's in the public eye, who gets a lot of, mean comments in a given day. And it's just comforting to, especially seeing Dave, who's got some thick skin, go, that's a
Yes.
Tuesday. Our mission's too important to let the critics decide what happens next.
Right. And the reality if you understand the way algorithms work, you and I get paid more for having both positive and negative comments, not because the algorithm is saying, oh, this is a positive comment, let's move this up. Oh, this is a negative comment, let's move it down. That's not the way it was explained to me by one of the guys at Google was they're looking at the activity.
Engagement.
So engagement. So if your book, your article, your blog post, your what do you call it, your post on media is getting tons of engagement, it's just going to go right through the roof. It's going to be shown to more and more and more people. And that's why sometimes you'll have somebody who'll put something out there that is completely absurd, but man, they're getting tons of comments, both good.
I lost your audio for some reason. Can you hear me? Testing 1 2. Check, check, check. Hello. Oh no. We're having such a good time. Bert, can you hear me? Not if you. Okay, he can hear me. I can't hear him. Bert's audio cut out. That's weird. This is a problem. All we
All
want to
right.
hear is Bert. Oh, there we're back.
Okay, now we're back.
What'd you do?
I have, let's see.
Did you hit a button?
Well, it looked like maybe it switched from my mic. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I can hear you now. That's all that
Okay.
matters. I hate it. I didn't know what you were saying, but it looked genius. You had that face of like, this is it.
All I was saying is we get paid more money for having haters and lovers than just having a few lovers.
That's true.
That engagement. All right. So all right, let's get this boat on the show. And let me do a proper introduction here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for stopping by today. My guest today is the one, the only George Kamel. He is a national best-selling author of the best-selling book, Break Free from Broke, and a personal finance expert. Looking forward to busting some myths, helping everyone get some more financial traction. George, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here, Bert. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. All right. So we were talking before the show, and one of the things that you said that I want to dive a little bit deeper into is that something along those lines that that the system is set up to keep us broke. Why do you say that? Based on what?
Well, if you talk to any 22-year-old, they'll tell you all of the problems they're facing, all of the criticisms of, the path that they were led down. And it usually starts at a young age. We're told, hey, go to school, follow this path, get good grades, go to college. Don't worry about the cost. We'll take out as much Sally Mae Monopoly money as it takes. Be sure to get a credit card at 18 because you got to get the credit score up. Go into debt. It's okay. You'll pay it off later. You'll get a great job. You'll be able to buy a house. And here we are, an entire generation going, I got screwed. And it's not my fault.
Right.
And so the theory of the book is the system is designed to keep you broke. It's not all your fault, but it's your responsibility. And finally, you can rise above the system and live life on your terms and actually accomplish your financial goals. And that was me, Bert. I was $40,000 in debt at 23, student loans, credit card debt, having played this game, being a part of the system, frustrated. I had anxiety. I thought there was no hope for me. And I fell into this Ramsey plan that said, hey, what if you just got out of debt aggressively and sacrificed your life for a short time so that you could have some long-term gains? This idea of delayed gratification, living on less than you make. So I did that. And 10 years later, I was a net worth millionaire, not with any fancy tricks, no get rich quick, just by getting out of debt, staying out of debt, having an emergency fund, putting money away into a 401k, getting a house the right way, paying it off early. And here I was in my early 30s, and my wife and I, net worth millionaires, living with more peace than ever.
Well, and to your point, I think debt, especially when you have a lot of debt, distracts from your life. Absolutely. Without a doubt. I think I'm a big believer that there is some good debt, credit cards not being one of them, but Dave Ramsey, and I'm going to ask you this. Dave Ramsey's a big believer that no debt is good debt, right? No, there is
It's
no such thing.
controversial.
Yeah. So do you believe the same thing? Or do you think that there are some times where, for instance, buying a house, that would be considered good debt? What's your take? Is there such thing as good debt versus bad debt?
I don't know anyone whose life was, worse off because they had no debt. When you think about it that way, it changes things. So, when it comes to debt, the one type of debt we don't yell at you for is a 15-year fixed rate mortgage that you're working to pay off early. That's it on the list. And that's only because the insurmountable feat of paying cash for a house, which some people still do, but that's the only caveat there. The rest of it, I go, I don't see a reason how this could be a blessing in your life. Just managing payments. I think life's too short to just sit there and manage payments and get good at debt management. And the problem is social media has made it very sexy to say, oh, the wealthy, this is how they do it. They leverage all the debt they can. And I'm going, listen, you're not Adele, okay? You don't have a $3 billion house. You are an average person like me. And I'm telling you, debt is not going to be a blessing. You're not going to be able to leverage yourself into a peaceful life. And
Right.
that's what I found. I think we need to villainize our debt versus celebrate it in today's culture to break free from broke.
Well, and I think also to your point about social media, people have to understand that what works for a billionaire or a multimillionaire or somebody who is, let's say, studied what they're doing for decades is different than for average working class, people like you and I, right? If you understand finance and money, okay, maybe, but for the average person, debt is a distraction. Debt is an energy killer. It's not the way to go. All right, so talk about your background. How did you go from average Joe with $40,000 worth of debt to the following Dave Ramsey, and then where you're at today?
Absolutely. So at 23, I was just a knucklehead who thought he knew everything. I had two credit cards. I had my Amex Sky Miles. I had the Discover Cashback. I had like 11 student loans between all these federal subsidized, unsubsidized. I didn't know which way was up. I didn't know what the interest rates were. And I ended up having identity theft. And so I pulled my credit report to make sure that, all was clear. And I found out all the debt that I had. And I went, oh, that part's not identity theft. Look at all these debts that I took out. And so that's when it became clear when I saw my debt load was higher than my income, my entry level income as a 23-year-old, it scared the crap out of me. And at 23, I got an internship here at Ramsey that turned into a temp job, that turned into a full time job. And that was 11 years ago now. And since then, I went through Financial Peace University and I learned about the system that was designed to keep me broke and sort of, the veil was torn. And I went, oh my gosh, I had to deprogram all of these myths that I thought were true about money, just watching society, the way my parents handled money, the traps that I fell into. And man, it's a hard pill to swallow when you look in the financial mirror and look at the reality of your situation. And that going through Financial Peace University, reading the Total Money Makeover, it gave me hope. It motivated me to go, you know what? I'm not going to let this be a death sentence. I'm going to get out of this debt within 2 years by sacrificing, by doing side hustles, by cutting down my lifestyle. I'm going to live like a broke college student so that later I can live like no one else. And so that's exactly what I did. And in 18 months, I knocked out that $40,000 worth of debt through doing all these side hustles. I was doing marketing consulting, driving for Uber and Lyft, living off of lean cuisines when they went on sale at the grocery store. I was doing everything in my power to create margin, which is something everyone would say they want more of. And the only way to create margin in your finances is to spend less and make more. And by doing both of those things, it's amazing what you can do. You'll go, oh my gosh, I got $1,000 freed up just because I got on a budget and followed these principles. And so that's exactly what I did. I met my wife here at Ramsey Solutions. She was much smarter, better with money, better looking than me. It worked out. And so we started off our marriage debt free with money in the bank. We put a big down payment on a reasonable townhome a little ways out from here, and we got it paid off in our early 30s. And that was all very intentional. And we pre-decided this is the kind of life we want to lead. These are the kind of people we want to be. People with peace, people without debt that have options and margin and freedom. And so here we are today, net worth millionaires, and I'm just shouting from the rooftop, listen, it's possible for you. Regardless of where you are today, things can be vastly different a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now.
It reminds me of a story I'm from Houston. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and the gentleman who started a company called Supercuts. And I think they're still around. Anyway, he was also based in Houston. He had written a book. And one of the things that he talks about in his book was this, I believe they were Chinese, it doesn't matter, Oriental couple who their uncle had brought them over. They're immigrants, barely speak any English. And they're starting to work for their uncle at this bakery. And basically the uncle says, hey, I'll sell you this bakery and you can have your own business, blah, blah, blah. And so I think the sell price was $100,000. Uncle's going to finance it for him. So this young couple decided that if they get a car, whether they pay cash for it or not, they're going to have there's still a cost there. Gasoline, insurance, upkeep. And if they get an apartment, even if they get a cheap one, the same thing. There's an additional cost there. But they also decided, listen, if we sacrifice and live in the back of the bakery like a couple of broke immigrants, then we could pay this $100,000 debt off in like a year, I think it was. And that's what they did.
Wow.
And so during that course of the year, she ends up getting pregnant. They have their first child. And then they surmise, hey, if we do this for another year, then we can pay cash for a house. Now, obviously, this is back in the day where you could buy a house for 50 or 60 grand or something. But either way, the thing that I walked away from and the moral of that story was this delayed gratification, this ability to sacrifice has been eliminated, deleted, eroded from the American mindset, which was not the way our country became the powerhouse that it is. It was based on no debt. It was based on rolling up your sleeves and getting to work, and not only getting to work, but sometimes working hard, sacrificing some of the niceties of life, right? And that's why the greatest generation, they had saved so much money, and then their kids, the boomers, we spent all that money. But that's what I see, is that because we live in this life of abundance, and then we have all of this misinformation about money and debt and living your best life ever, that this idea of delayed gratification and sacrifice has been completely ripped out of our, I don't know, mindset, of our jargon. What's your take?
Well, I think our ability to achieve success and have a comfortable life is directly correlated with our willingness to do the opposite, to live in discomfort for a while. And so here's what we found at Ramsey. If you're willing to be uncomfortable for a short season, you will have a long season of abundance and a wonderful, peaceful life. But when you're not willing to do that, here's what happens. You have this low level discomfort for this sort of, a little bit of comfort now, but it kind of wears off. And you go, at some point, life's just too stressful to even go on another vacation and hope that we have enough credit card points and swipe our way into the next trip or thing or, product or experience. And so we live in a very consumer driven culture, which says, hey, as long as you look like you're doing well, you are doing well, regardless of what's actually happening behind the scenes, behind the curtain, which is, oh, your marriage is hanging on by a thread. You have no close relationships. You're actually really stressed about money, and that trip isn't worth it because you're going to be paying for it a year from now. But that part you don't get to post on Instagram. You get to post the sunset from Hawaii like Bert and go, look at the life Bert has. Oh my gosh, I want that life. And so it's a very difficult thing when you look at how, consumer driven and comparison driven our culture is. Because back in the day, you only knew what your neighbor was driving. Now
Right.
I know what everyone in America is driving on social media because they're holding shiny keys and look what hubby got me. And I'm going, oh my gosh, what are the payments on that thing? We don't know the stressful conversation happening behind the scenes. And so I tell people, you got to run your own race, because if you try to run someone else's, there is no finish line. It's exhausting. You'll end up
Yes.
nowhere. And so you got to figure out what really matters to you, why those are your motivations, and then run towards that thing with just blinders on, because who gives a crap what everyone else is doing and what their net worth is and what their debt load is? I just want peace for my family and for my legacy.
Absolutely. And I think, again, back to the student loan stuff that you talked about, there is there is a system there that needs an enema.
Absolutely.
Back in the day, you get a student loan and it was fairly inexpensive, and also college wasn't the crazy price that it is today. So now the student loans are no longer 2 and 3%; they're 6, 7, 8%. And your college, a cheap one, is still going to cost you 40, 50 grand. And that's assuming that you get a degree that you can actually convert to cash.
That has marketplace value.
Right. Because if you get one of those liberal arts degree, you better have a backup. It just so happens I have a friend of mine. He got a liberal arts degree. It was the fastest degree he could get. His plan was to go to law school. He had, and so if there was a way to just go into law school, which kind of makes sense to me, why isn't there that ability? But either way, you got a liberal arts. It was fast. It was cheap. And then he went right into law school, which I want to say 15 years after he got his law degree, he's a partner at a law firm. He still owes $80,000. And I said, well, why don't you just pay it off? You're making a lot of money. He goes, my loan is 3%. And if I just take my money and invest it, I can get 5, 6, 10%. I can put it in the S&P 500 and clip coupons and pay off my loan. What do you think about a strategy like that? If you got a 3% debt and you can make 8% on your money, would you still pay off the debt, or would you do what this guy did?
Oh man, I think the spread is never worth it, because behind that is a guy who's secretly or not so secretly kind of stressed and trying to keep up and prop up a lifestyle that he feels like he has to have because he's a big time partner at the firm. And this
Right.
is what we see with people with high salaries. It doesn't necessarily equate to a lot of margin in their finances. Because what do? Well, you get a nicer car with a bigger payment. You get a bigger house with a bigger payment. And this lifestyle creep is causing people that are making six figures to still live paycheck to paycheck. And all it takes is one thing to happen in their life to where their life could implode. The house of cards comes crashing down. And so if you can learn to still live on less than you make, you can learn to avoid debt. Because I'll tell you, if he can just pay off that debt, it's going to free up some serious payments that he could then use to build wealth for the rest of his life, because your income is your greatest wealth building tool, not some spread on your loan.
Right. Right. There is another friend of mine who's a lawyer, and what was so awesome. Here he is. He had a previous career, but anyway, he went back, got a law degree, and the people at the law firm kept giving him crap. He's making, I want to say, about 220 a year, and what he drives to work is his Subaru that he's had for like 12 or 15 years. It's an absolute beater. But but again, he is that mindset. I have no debt. Why do I want to get another car? Even though he could pay cash for it, to your point, I can pay cash for it, but yet that's money that I can leave in my investment account and continue to have that grow. So he kept driving that car until he became partner, and then he opted for a different car at that point. And there's there's a meme out there where it's something like, if you would have bought a Tesla S or whatever and paid, I think you would have paid 78 grand. In what is it, 5 years, the car is worth, whatever it's worth, zero or close to zero. But if you had taken that $78,000 and invested it for 5 years, oh, that's what it was. If you would have bought Tesla stock
Oh,
with the
instead of
C,
buying the depreciating asset, you buy the
right,
appreciating asset.
then it would be like you'd be worth like something like 2 point something million dollars, because
Yeah.
at one point Tesla was $2,000 a share
But
or
you can't
whatever.
drive your stocks around and impress your friends. You got to
Right.
drive the car. And so
You
that
got to drive.
again, that's a great principle. And I love that your friend had that mentality. And at the heart of it, here it is. Not caring what other people think is a wealth
Yes.
building superpower. And so
Yes.
he's going, who do I need to impress? My car drives fine. I don't care what you think about my car. And I think that mentality is what causes people to be truly successful, not just on paper, but behind the scenes. When they're at home, that guy's sleeping well at night because he's not worried about needing to make another car payment. Instead, he's thinking about the future instead of paying for the past. And those people I think are the most inspiring. They're near and dear to my heart. And it's the mentality that I've adopted over the last decade. And it's what's caused me to live with more peace and have more wealth. And I still live on way less than I make. And when you have that savings rate creep from 15% to 30% to 40 to 60%, that's, that becomes that FU money where you go, hey, boss, don't care what you think. I'm getting out of here. I don't need this. That's the kind of life you want to live. That's freedom. That's options.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let me ask you this. We've talked just about a few things, primarily the debt and the social media junk that goes with it and stuff like that. Any other money myths or money trends that are driving you crazy?
Where do I begin? I need to talk to a therapist at this point. Oh my gosh. Well, one of the biggest ones I've addressed lately is the credit card versus debit card mythology. There's a lot of people who they think you are like living on the edge if you use a debit card. Like, what kind of idiot are you with your business hanging out there using your debit card? And so my debit card does everything a credit card can do. I don't have a credit score because I don't have any open lines of credit. I don't have a mortgage. And people look at me like I got seven eyes because of the way I live my life. Because they're playing checkers over here, playing the systems game of I got to keep up my credit score to have access to more debt, and I got to use my card to get the points, to get the rewards, to get the flights. And I'm going, yeah, but I know how to just save up and pay cash and do my research and get good deals. I know how to book cars and hotels and do whatever with a debit card with no credit score, including renting apartments, including getting a mortgage. I got a mortgage without a credit score through manual underwriting. And people look at me like, yeah, well, it worked for you. I'm like, no, it didn't work for me because listen, I got immigrant parents. I'm Middle Eastern. There's no racial profiling happening here. You just need to learn that there's another way to play the game. And so I'm kind of playing chess over here, minding my own business. And so that's one of the biggest myths is about the credit score, that your credit score is everything. You got to have one. There's the car myth. I'll always have a car payment. Why would you pay cash for a car? It doesn't make sense. You could deploy that money and, arbitrage it and make a spread over here. And as long as you get a low interest rate, that's all that matters. Nobody can agree on what a low interest rate is anymore. Because for the boomers, 6% is a great interest rate on a mortgage.
Right.
And for the millennials, they're like, oh my gosh, 3%. Oh, I have a 2.1. I'm like, okay, buzz off. I got a 0% interest rate. How about that? Student loans are good debt. That's another one that we've heard a lot because of the ROI, which is very quickly dwindling in the marketplace as more and more employers are going, I don't care about the degree as much as the guy. Do you have for the experience and skills and soft skills? And you a person of character that I want to hire? Will you show up on time and do the work? That's what employers care about these days more than the piece of paper, which any college will grant you now. It used to be special to go to college to get the acceptance letter. And now you just get to the opportunity to give them $200,000 over the next 4 years to go to their esteemed, prestigious school. And so there's all of these myths. I think it's like all these companies are in cahoots to get you into massive amounts of debt to keep you playing this game and keep you in this hamster wheel of stress. And so all of those myths are driving me crazy lately, and they're all connected to debt. And it's what I cover in the first two-thirds of my book, Breaking Free from Broke. It's credit scores. I cover credit cards, student loans, auto loans, mortgages, investment traps, and all of that. Once you understand where we are, where this all came from, and why they're not going to be a blessing in your life, it just helps you avoid it all and live life with more peace and follow the next steps, which is let's build wealth the right way. Once we're out of debt, what are we going to do now? And that's a much better place to be.
All right. So when you say let's build wealth the right way, what would you say the first crucial steps to building wealth the right way?
Well, number one, we talk about investing in things that you understand. And too many people out there, they see one TikTok or Instagram reel or their buddy who works at the firm who says, "Bro, trust me, I'll get you 10x." You fall for an online course from some guru who says they're going to 10x your money. And so there's a lot of get rich quick. And I think especially from the younger generations, because they saw their parents struggle for 30 years in a career they hated, all to have a meager pension. And so they're going, I don't want that to be me. And so their path now is, well, I got to make $1 million by the time I'm 25 or else I'm screwed. That's what's happening. These are the real calls we're getting on the Ramsey show that I'm taking. 18-year-olds who go, I need $1 million in the next 5 years or else. And I'm going, where are you getting this from?
Right.
And so the key to wealth is to be a crockpot in a world full of microwaves. So invest in what you understand, go slow. If it sounds like get rich quick, run. If it's get rich slow, it's probably the right path. And what we found in our millionaire study, we interviewed, studied 10,000 of these millionaires that are real life, on paper, net worth millionaires. And what we found is that 80% said the 401k was the number one vehicle to their net worth millionaire status. And that's about the most boring financial advice you could give someone is to just, hey, from 25 to 65, just put 15% of your gross income away in that 401k into some good growth stock mutual funds or index funds, and you'll be just fine. Well, everyone wants to play the game a little faster. They want to be the
Of
hare instead of
course.
the tortoise. And so where that leads them down a path where they go, no, I'm going to download Robinhood and I'm going to choose the right single stocks. I'm going to choose just like Apple and Tesla are going to be the things that get me to the whatever, or crypto or NFTs. And so I know whole life insurance policies that I'm going to borrow against. That's going to be my path to wealth. These are the things that I fight against in the book, in the investment traps chapter and the wealth is patience chapter. I show you in real time what it's going to take to do this more peacefully. And the fact is, it takes longer. But guess what? You're going to get there. You have a much higher chance of success if you do it slow than if you try to go fast and be the genius and be the prodigy.
The thing that I learned when I decided to really start taking charge, being responsible for my retirement, being responsible for my wealth, I signed up for a couple of newsletters, Motley.
Motley
Anyway,
Crue is a great band. I think Motley
yeah,
Fool is the financial
Motley
one.
Fool. Thank
I
you.
was like, Motley Crue's giving financial advice? I've missed out on this. This would be amazing.
Well, if they were giving financial advice, it'd probably be good, about as good as advice as you'd find on any other part of the internet, right? So
That's
it
right.
wouldn't be bad. But yeah, you're right, Motley Fool, and it was helpful. But what I realized was, uh, as you go down this investment rabbit hole, like a lot of people, I came across this guy named Warren Buffett, and the more I studied Warren Buffett and listened to Warren Buffett, the thing that I walked away from is it's definitely time over money, or money over time. You got to do it consistently. You got to do it consistently over time. And so uh, I just look at what Warren Buffett does, and I try to mimic that on a smaller scale, because one of the things that Warren Buffett does, and he talks about this, he'll spend hours, sometimes weeks, looking at a stock or looking at a company before he decides to invest in them. And he says, if you can't do that, if you don't have the commitment, if you don't know how to research a company, he says, buy the S&P 500, and in 20 years, you'll probably be a millionaire. And I thought, wow, that's so simple. And again, when you study that and when you look at it, it's true. I mean, the thing that Warren Buffett preaches is time. You got to be patient. He talks about, I'm buying Apple today, and this is a recent thing. When I say recent, when he bought Apple a couple of years ago or whatever, he talked, I'm buying Apple today. He says, I don't try to time the stock. He says nobody can, the stock market. So I'm buying Apple today, and all I know that in 10 years from now, listen to that timeline. All I know that in 10 years from now, I'm going to be selling it for more than what I bought it for. And to your point, most of us are like, I want to buy it now, and I need to double my money tomorrow. Otherwise, this whole thing doesn't work. This is a scam, right?
Yeah. And that's where crypto comes into play. That's
Yes.
really the hope. They claim, well, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to hold it. No, you're doing it because you want 1,000 extra money in a year. And it turns out you have a much higher chance of losing everything you put in than you have gaining 1,000x. And I think Warren is onto something. He said he wouldn't buy all the crypto in the world for $25. That was a
Right.
direct quote. He said, what would I do with it? It produces nothing. I still have to turn that into money in order to do anything with it. And I think there's a tried and true principle there. And there's a reason the guy is, in his 80s now?
Yeah. Hey, no,
And
90s.
in his 90s now. And you look at that and you go, okay, he's not a 25-year-old touting some get rich quick scheme. He's an old guy who's been investing for a really long time and did it with a lot of diligence and had success along the way. And I think most young people, they don't know that in their minds, they're like, well, I'll never be 60. I want to YOLO this thing. I don't want to wait till I'm 60 to enjoy any of my money. And that's what I love about the Ramsey plan. We're going, no, you can enjoy your money in your 30s and 40s instead of hoping that there's money later on in retirement when you did nothing to prepare for it. And so that's what I love about the plan. I'm in my 30s. I can do pretty much whatever we want now because of the financial piece that we've set ourselves up for by getting out of debt, staying out of debt, investing wisely.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I love about Warren Buffett, he still lives in the same house he bought 100 years ago, whenever it was. He doesn't have
It's like
some.
zero lifestyle creep with this guy.
Right, right. The only thing that he has, and he made fun of himself, is that because he became fairly famous and recognizable, he finally bought a private plane.
There
And
we
and
go.
he calls it the indefensible because it is, he says for the most part, you cannot defend buying a private plane. They cost you an arm and a leg. They're very expensive to keep, but it just got to a point where he couldn't get through the airport because people would just swarm him, right?
Oh yeah. Well, he's
And
buying his time back. That's what the
right,
wealthy really do. When they spend their money, they're going, okay, well, how can I get more time back in my life? And he's right. He's shaving off hours and hours a week just by being able to fly private, and that is a wonderful luxury.
absolutely. And then there's a fairly famous picture out there, and it's got Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. And somebody pointed out, if you're looking at these two guys, you would never know that they're billionaires. They're wearing jeans and a sweater, and I think, and that was Bill Gates, and I think Zuckerberg was jeans and a
He's
t-shirt.
a t-shirt guy. Yep.
He's a t-shirt guy, and so, and what's so funny to your point, where you have these guys who are screaming, "I'm going to make you rich, 10x this, and look at my lifestyle." You
They
got
have
to
like
wonder,
crazy watches and
yes,
suits and the private jets.
and you really got to wonder what it is. And look, part of their deal is I got to show you my stuff so you believe me enough to buy my stuff so I can continue to buy more of my stuff, right? And it's no different than the fitness influencer who's got the six pack. He's got to show you the six pack, or she's got to show you the six pack, because that way you believe me enough to buy my stuff, which is fine. Look, that works well. It's a true and try way of making money online. But to your point, you got to block some of that out, or all of that out. And you got to listen to the people who aren't talking about their assets, who aren't talking about, look at my private jet, like a Warren Buffett. And you got to look at these people. Warren Buffett's friend who just passed away, Charlie Munger,
Oh yeah.
you know,
R.I.P.
yeah, plain Jane. Again, no, you would never know he was a wealthy, not just wealthy, but a billionaire.
And those guys truly seem happy.
Yes,
And that's the
that,
best part is like people think that chasing more and more stuff and this experience, and if I get this, when in reality, the reason they were buying all that was to impress other people. They really
yes.
didn't enjoy it themselves. And so believe it's okay to spend money on things that are very expensive if you pay cash for it and it's born out of the right motives. The problem becomes when you start buying stuff to impress other people, and they might be impressed for a second, but then you start to gather a weird crowd around you that's very vain, and you have no deep relationships, and people are only surrounded, you're only surrounded by you because they want things from you, and they're
Right.
like leeches. And once you can't give them that, it's just this empty house of cards. And so I believe we gotta aim bigger than that and aim for a life that has a little more meaning than just stuff.
What's interesting is I interviewed, she's a Harvard professor named Dr. Ellen Langer, and she said something that is so eye-opening. It struck me hard, and that is, we buy stuff, or we do these things so we can get respect from other people, so we can then get self-respect from ourselves.
Ooh,
I was like, oh, what?
sick burn.
Oh my
Dang.
gosh. It's just like, when you think about that, that is so true. Because if you ever go to a doctor's office or a lawyer's office or a CPA or somebody, and behind them, usually in a gold frame, is their degree, especially if it's from a big
Name
Ivy
brand
League
famous
school. Yeah,
schools. Yep.
yeah. Why are they showing you the degree? because we really don't care. I mean, have you ever gone to your doctor, your doctor or lawyer's office and said, hey, where did you graduate from? Can I see your degree? What was your GPA? You just hope that you can build enough trust with this guy that he's got enough that he can solve your problems. Other than that, you don't care whether he's got a degree or not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's usually in font I can't read anyways from a school. I don't even know where the school is. I just go, listen, if this hospital system decided they should hire this guy, it's good enough he knows more than I do about this medical stuff. So maybe I should trust him. And you're right. There's a lot of flexing going on. And when you can bypass that, you leapfrog that like weird game to get respect. And instead you go, I got self-respect. I know who I am. Most people haven't done the level of soul searching needed to just build a life that doesn't exhaust them, to love themselves for who they are. And so instead, they have these trauma, baggage, shame, whatever, and they try to fill this void with other people's respect, which is it's an endless chase, like I mentioned earlier. And so I think you're better off just getting therapy to deal with that versus trying to live this fake life to impress people you don't even care about.
Right. And who truly don't care about you. I mean,
Exactly.
hey, it's great. You're a multimillionaire. That's great. If you died tomorrow, it would not impact them at all unless you left money to them. They could care less.
Now
All
that's an
right.
idea.
Yeah.
Just everyone who follows me gets $1.
That's it. That's it. All right. I want to ask you this. This is what become one of my favorite topics. I want to get your take on it before I give you my take on it. And that is, they call it tip inflation, tipflation. Tipping is gone rampant. It's now the latest pandemic. Everywhere you go, people are asking you for a tip. What's your take on tipping?
Well, I think the response to that is what's happening now, which is tipping fatigue, tipping frustration, and there's a lot of expectation. My take on this is real simple. If I am standing up, I am not tipping. If you were coming to me, now we're talking. If I'm sitting down, you're providing a service to me. Now I'm talking. If I'm paying for the convenience of you coming to my house to bring me a thing, coming to the table nonstop to bring me a thing, then I think it's worth the tip. Everything else, unless they really go above and beyond in some way, I'm not doing it. And it's not out of a spirit of a lack of generosity. I'm just not a fan of forced generosity because I think it loses the entire spirit of generosity when it's an obligation. And so that's the hot take on tipflation. And the poor workers, I really don't blame them because they're working with these iPads and systems that just they go, oh, I'm just gonna ask you a few questions. It's like you don't know what the question's gonna be. Or my least favorite is when they're giving you mediocre service, but then right at the end, as they're spinning the iPad, they go, I love those glasses. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And I just happen to be now looking at the tip screen and I go, dang it. I almost fell for this trap. They were just being nice while I was on the tip screen. And so that's another sneaky trick. And so I don't think there's a bad time to be generous, but I'm also not going to fall for this forced generosity where it just allows employers to not pay their employees enough because we're going to subsidize their pay through tips.
Right. I fully agree. I think, first of all, it's gotten out of hand. I love the idea of, yeah, if I'm standing up, I'm, I don't need to give you a tip.
And before you got any service or food, they're asking for, I'm like, I
Yes.
don't know. Is the food even going to show up? Is it going to be cold? Is it going to be
Right.
overcooked? I got no idea. And so I think, we lost the meaning of the tip when we're doing it ahead of time with no service presented while we're doing half of the work. And
Right.
so
Right.
I'm willing, just, you know what, if you want to raise your prices, then do that. And I'll decide if I still want to be a consumer here and be a customer here. But don't play this weird tipping game. Don't sneak it on me. There's a new one they call it like a health I asked about this. I was at a restaurant. There was a 3% health fee. And hey, this wasn't included. I wasn't told about this. They said, oh, well, that's to pay for the health care of the employees. I went, well, that's all good and well, but I feel like the employer should just pay for that. And then if they need to increase prices, go for it. But don't sneak it on me as some
Right.
weird thing I got to pay for. And so I think that's what's happening with a lot of business owners. And shout out to the small business owners. They're doing their best, but there's a right and wrong way to approach tipping. And I don't think sneaking it on customers or forcing it on them at the front end is the way to do it.
Yeah. First of all, I would be suspicious on that 3% health fee. I bet you I'm just suspicious. They probably don't get it. The employees probably don't get it. Number one. Number two, if I'm going to be subsidizing their health insurance, should I be subsidizing the company's rent too,
That's
right?
true. Isn't
Should there
that
be a
built
rent
into the
fee?
cost of
Right?
goods?
Just like, so to your point, oh my gosh, I was at a restaurant in California, and this is just a, just a run of the mill type of taqueria, whatever, and so they bring us the menu, and in the menu there's a thing about uh, you know something about it would be grateful if you could include if you could add an additional tip for the workers in the kitchen. And then, of course, when they bring you, so that's a little ad there to get you ready. So when they bring you the check, there it is. And I'm like, sorry, uh, you know, I don't know what to tell you. I don't own a restaurant, but this seems kind of sloppy. So I'm not going to tip the guys in the back. I'll tip my server, and I'll tip her accordingly.
The person I interacted with that waited on me, that part makes sense. But just pay
Right,
the guys in the back what they're worth, and
right,
they get to decide if they want this job or not. It's that
absolutely.
simple.
And and,
I don't
and
understand it.
I don't either. And California, unfortunately, is an experiment. So far, the results I think have been poor. We'll see what happens. I not to go down this political rabbit hole, but California's done some weird things when it comes to small business,
Oh yeah. Well, people
and
are opting out. They're moving in droves,
they're
moving
moving
business
out in
away.
droves.
Too
Yeah, and
expensive.
it's too expensive. And so uh, the thing that shocked me was when the governor, they were trying to vote him out, but they voted him back in unanimously. It was a landslide. It's like you got all these problems, and it seems like he's making it worse. I think now would be a good time to change, but they said no. We like
And
we
yet
like
we're
to think
going,
of,
nope, retweet. Let's try
yeah,
that again.
that's right. All right, so
Oh,
that
that's fun.
yeah, that's
I just
another
don't eat
thing.
out as much. I'll do like takeout, occasionally, but overall, I'm just like, is this really going to be worth the experience and I believe people just shouldn't go out to restaurants if they can't afford to tip. And so there's a
Right.
difference there from like being stingy and generosity. I think there's a right way to do it. And we only go out, and when we do, and we have service, I want you to tip well. I think that's a good thing to do. But even then, the tip now, the goalpost has moved. Now, if it's not 20%, you're a stingy, terrible
You're a
person.
deadbeat.
Back in my day, it was like, all right, 10% is solid, 15% is that's really good. 20% is like if they went above and beyond, amazing. And now it's just standard 20%, regardless of what the heck happened. On the iPad, 20% is now the starting point.
Yeah, 20%, and then 20, 22, 25. It's
Exactly.
crazy. It's crazy. I always hit no. I do a custom thing. It's a pain in the butt. But
Now
all
there's
right.
self-checkout. It's like, who am I tipping a self? Do I get the money back? Am I tipping myself? And even online, you buy a piece of furniture and they go, "Hey, you want to leave a tip?" I'm like, "To who? The guy in the warehouse who moved I don't understand what's going on here. Just pay your people more and increase the prices. I would rather pay that in the price of the product than for it to be put on me in this weird, awkward social way."
I agree. I agree. It is. It's gotten out of hand. Oh, and real quick, uh, I did a telemed thing where you visit with your doctor via
Yes.
Zoom, and then they sent me the bill, and in the bill was a tip. There was a tip
You're
line,
joking.
and it was already filled in, so I had to, luckily get.
Pre-selected tip.
Yeah, so I was able to opt out, and I've known this guy for years. I'm saying, what the crap is this? Oh, dude, it's a new software we're using. It's automatic. I haven't figured out how to turn it off. Okay, well, I'm not tipping
Oh
you.
boy.
And
Yeah, exactly. And at what point does it end? Because then everyone and their mom's going to go, "Well, I deserve a tip for what I do at work." I'm like, maybe you do, but we can't just, let the cat out of the bag here and go, everyone gets a tip. I'd love a tip too for doing this podcast. If you enjoyed it, let's open the tip jar up for old George, At some point it gets to be too much.
absolutely. By the way, if you don't want to give us a tip, we'll take a like, a thumbs up, a comment, a
Now we're
share.
talking.
We'll take a tip in that form. All
And
right, so
that's
let me.
amazing. This show is free. It's not even costing you anything. And
That's
what we're
right.
asking you to do is free. I think that's very
That,
nice of you.
Thank you, thank you. And if you take some notes, I guarantee you will walk away with something that will help you get out of debt and move closer to your wealth goals. All right, so I want to talk about this because everybody's got them, but I'm so curious to find out what is George's money hacks for saving money.
Oh, well, I always joke that, everything is 100% off when you don't buy it. And so the true hack lies in just needing less and wanting less and realizing more stuff is not going to add any real value to your life. But if you want to talk about realistic hacks, there's different areas that I think people could do better with. And one is travel, another one is eating out, another one is just shopping, especially online shopping. And I have a framework that I'll share that sort of becomes the life hack. And it's called the Smart Spender Framework. And it spells out the word smart, SMART. You ask yourself 5 questions. The S is for self awareness. Is this thing going to add value to my life? If you answer yes, you move on to the M for motive. Am I buying this for the right reason? And we talked about that earlier. What are you really buying this for? Is it boundaries, social pressures, retail therapy? Is it out of emotion? Is it out of I need to impress someone? And if you said, yes, I'm buying this for the right reason, move on to the A for affordability. Is this in my budget? Which means, can I and will I pay cash for this today with money I actually have on hand? If the answer is no, that means we got to pause. We got to build up our savings muscle here. But if you say yes, move on to the R for research. Is this the best option, retailer, and price? This is the part where people really get screwed, Bert, because it's impulsive. They just go and they click and they buy and add to cart, and that's where they're not doing the research, and that's where a lot of these money hacks come into play. And then finally, if you did that research, you move on to the T for timing. Is now the time to buy it? This is opportunity cost. Because if you buy this thing now, you can't do XYZ. You can't fund retirement. You're not going to be able to replace the tire. So you got to ask yourself, is now the time or could this wait 6 months? And usually the truth is, if you wait 24 hours, 48 hours, you don't even want the thing anymore. And you realize it was just impulsive. It's the inner, toddler inside of us that said, I want it now. So if you can say yes to all 5 of those questions, then you're going to make a purchase with intentionality instead of regret and impulse. And that's what I found to be the best way it helps me, just think through it a little more methodically, which marketing doesn't want you to do. Marketing says you need this now and you've been living without it and you didn't know this existed 2 seconds ago and now you can't live without it for another 2 seconds. That's what most marketing wants us to believe. And so you've got to really put that shield up if you want to win with money. And part of that is, the money hacks, which is I'm trying to avoid paying retail price for literally anything. I just recently did this with concert tickets. Another thing I'm very frustrated by is the insane, like, you try to go buy a concert ticket, all the tickets are gone instantly. Scalpers bought them all up, and now you're left paying 3x, 4x, 5x that ticket price in order for the pleasure of seeing that artist or comedian or whatever. And so I did this with Seinfeld. It was a few weeks ago. He was coming through Nashville. Tickets were $400 to $500 on StubHub. And I went, I love Seinfeld. This is a once in a lifetime experience. I'm unwilling to pay $1,000 for a pair of tickets. So what I did was I scoured the internet. I literally searched Seinfeld tickets on Twitter, on Facebook to see, is anyone out there, any real people willing to sell their tickets for what they paid for it, for retail price. And I ended up haggling with a guy, negotiating with a guy, and I got 11th row tickets. They were 200 something, $280, and I paid $80 for it.
Wow.
Because it was last minute.
Yeah.
He couldn't use them. I waited till the last minute because that's when people start to get a little desperate. And so that kind of mentality, while taking a little more diligence and time and research, ended up saving me, hundreds of dollars. And that's something most people are just unwilling to do. And I understand not everyone's going to be a frugal nerd like me, but also don't just willy-nilly impulse buy, tickets for $500 when the ticket would have cost $100. And so there's a little bit of just mentality around it. For travel hacks, using certain apps and doing your research, of course, Google Flights, being flexible with your travel dates and destinations, booking on certain days like Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday tend to be the better days to book travel versus other days of the week. Fare comparison websites, using sites like Costco Travel. I've booked some, trips and honeymoons and anniversary trips through them, and it's been great. Skyscanner is another great option. And even with Southwest, a hack that I've helped a lot of people with here, you book a flight with Southwest, and then all of a sudden they go, hey, we got a sale. And you're like, wait, is my flight cheaper now? Well, people don't know. You can go back and change your flight, rebook for the same exact flight, and Southwest will give you a credit for the difference. And people are messaging me saying, dude, you just saved me $200. I didn't realize I paid $300 for my flight. That was two people. That was $600. I went back and checked, and I got a $200 credit back because the flights were $100 cheaper each. So all that, it warms my heart to see people save money,
Right.
in an ethical way. We're not doing anything illegal here, not doing anything immoral. But again, that takes a little bit of diligence and research. And even eating out, there's a lot of hacks there, depending on your poison of choice. I'm not a big fast food guy, and so I'm not going to advocate for like go get the $5 meal at McDonald's every
Right.
day, and your life's going to be great and you'll save money. I care about your health too much to tell you to do that. But again, skipping out on appetizers and desserts and realizing that portion control at restaurants is out of control and going, I probably don't need to eat that much to the point that I hate myself. So I usually skip an appetizer, skip the dessert. My wife and I might split an entree, and maybe we'll get a cocktail if it's a nice cocktail bar or something like that. And get a dessert on the way home. Stop at Whole Foods and get a pint of ice cream, and you still saved yourself $25. And so there's things like that you can do anywhere. Again, I mentioned getting takeout instead of eating at the restaurant, and that can save you, the tip at the very least. But also, you're going to get sold on all the upgrades and the appetizers and the desserts when you're at the restaurant versus takeout, where you have more control. There's of course happy hours, lunch specials, all the things like that, coupons, city saver kind of books that you can get through your local schools and communities. And then shopping online is another big one. I love there's a browser extension called Honey that I think was now bought out by PayPal, and that's just loaded into my browser. And whenever I'm shopping, Honey will say, "Hey, we're going to automatically apply 7 different promo codes to see if we can get you a better deal." Or, "Hey, we can get you a gift card at 90% of the cost for this purchase you're about to make." And so all of that has helped me make better spending decisions. And with Amazon, that's another big one. Everyone's using Amazon. There's a site called Camel, 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 no relation to me, Bert, as a guy named George Camel, where it'll actually show you the price history of an item. Because the confusing part with Amazon, well, it'll say MSRP was $150, now it's on sale for 60. And I'm going, well, how do I know if that's actually a good deal? What if it's always 60? What if tomorrow it's going to be 50? And so I can enter in the link or type in the product on Amazon on Camel, Camel, Camel. It will show me the price history. And I can go, oh, this is a normal price. And actually, it's going to dip down every July or every whatever September, Black Friday. It's going to dip down to 50. I'll just wait. And you can even get notifications when the price drops. So those are some helpful tools I found for searching online. Even Google Images. Have you used the Google Images app as a life hack, Bert?
I've used it a few times for search, never for a better price. How are you using it for
So here's what
price?
I do. Let's say my mom says, "Hey, I love this lamp, but it's a very expensive designer lamp. Can you find me one that's more reasonably priced?" So what you do is you take a photo of it or take a screenshot of it, you upload it to Google Images as a reverse image search, and Google will then show you all the places a similar style lamp is available. And now I can actually do my research, find out, oh, you know what? Target has one that kind of looks just like it, but it's only $200 instead of $800. So I've used that as a great way, or even if you just want the item and you don't know where the heck to buy it. You saw it online, you saw it in person, there's no tags on it. Take a picture of it, upload it to Google Image Search, and there your shopping journey can begin. And so those are some simple ways you can just be a more, be a smart spender, as I call it, and be more intentional and be just a more informed consumer.
I love those. Those are great. I love the smart framework. That's brilliant. I will. That to me is just brilliant. I'll just leave it at that. That is
Thank you. Yeah, and that's
brilliant.
in the book. In the spending and self-control chapter of the book, that's where I kind of lay that out and show you how to live that out. And I think that's what it comes down to. We need to have more self-control with our spending. Consumer debt is out of control, as you know. We're at
Right.
record highs on everything. Auto loans, student loans, even credit card debt is now at $1.2 trillion dollars. And so this is an epidemic that needs to stop. And it starts with us. We're the ones causing the inflation. We're the ones not helping the Fed. When the Fed cuts the rate and they go, we're not, people are still spending out of control. It's because of debt. We kind of have this shortcut to the stuff we want through payments. And that's causing this entire, economy issue that we're facing where we can't cool the housing market fast enough, even as the Fed starts to cut the rate. So I think we're a big part of the problem and we're also the solution.
Totally agree. A couple of my hacks, since we're sharing.
Oh, hit
Uh,
me. I got to write
so
these down.
all right. So one of my favorite hacks is this works online. Is again whether you do this. with Amazon, or you do this, especially outside of Amazon, it works even better. But you load your shopping cart. You don't buy it. You just load it, shut it down, and within a few hours, or maybe 24 hours, they're going to send you a notice saying, "Hey, you forgot to check out." And then you just ignore it. And then within a day or two, "Hey, if you check out now, we'll give you 10% off." And so it's cheaper for them to give you a 10% discount than
Than
to
to
lose
lose
the
you.
sale. Yeah. So,
Yeah, that makes
so
sense.
in the world of marketing, your first sale is the hardest. So if you can get that first sale, even though you might not make as much profit, but that means that this customer trusts you enough to give them your money, your credit card, your identity. That's a big, big deal in the world of online marketing. And so if hopefully the consumer has a good experience, they got it at a cheaper cost, and maybe they'll buy from you again. So it's called the abandoned cart hack. That's what I call it. You abandon the cart.
Yes.
My favorite, takes no technical skills whatsoever, is you ask for the discount.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Even at a retail store, I kid you not, especially if you're buying a lot. Like, we have 5 kids. They're all now grown. But when we used to have 5 kids at home, I would never ever be embarrassed because I'm going to go drop two, three, $400, and I would always ask for the manager, and I would always start off the same way. "Boy, we love the store. We got you. Think you guys are great. This customer service has been nice. I got 5 kids. Is there any way I can get a discount?" And 80% of the time, they'll give you a discount.
Oh yeah. You got to
Uh,
have no shame. And that's the hard
oh,
part. They don't want conflict. They don't want to be rejected. And I'm going, again, the reward is going to be worth it here. The risk is they
right.
say, nope, can't do that. And I go, all right, thank you. I'm
Yeah.
going to be kind. We're not going to be a jerk about it. But you're right. More often than not, they're going, yeah, we can do 10% off.
Yeah.
I'll even do a cash discount. I'll say, hey, if I'm paying cash, would you be
Yes.
willing to give me a discount? And for services rendered, this works well, even for big product purchases. And it doesn't have to be physical cold hard cash, but sometimes if I write a check, they can avoid the credit card processing fees, which is 3%,
3%. Yeah.
and they're willing to discount it. So when it comes to a big purchase, I even got one at Home Depot one time because I was just nice to this kid and he was saying, "Hey, do you play video games?" I went, "No, do you?" And he went, "Yeah." I said, "What are you into?" And I chatted him up and he went, "Hey, you know what? I have a discretionary discount I can give once a day to a customer and I'm going to
Wow.
give it to you." So he gave me an extra 50 bucks off on top of my 10% coupon on a fridge. And he said, and he was just like, "Just because you were cool." I went, "That's so kind. Thank you so much." Leaving a review. Say, "Hey, I'd be happy to leave you some glowing reviews. I've had a great experience. Would you be willing to give me a discount?"
Yes.
Or if I leave
Nice.
you a review on Yelp and Google. And, that means a lot to a small business owner, especially if it means a repeat customer. I'm going to share with my friends. And so never be scared to ask for a discount. It's not rude. You're not undercutting them. Be kind always. Don't be a jerk about it.
Right.
And it's amazing what will happen.
Absolutely. You know,
Okay. Kurt's
for
telling me we got time for one more.
Oh, okay. So real quick, Acorns is one of my favorite things. Acorns is one of these things like a digital coin jar saver, right? So back in the day, old people like us, we'd come back at the end of the day and we'd empty out our change into a jar. Well, a lot of us don't carry cash anymore, but you can connect your debit card to Acorns, and every time you spend, let's say 90 cents, they'll round up to that 10 cents. They'll take it and they'll put it into their account that's got a high yield account. That's how we take care of Christmas at the end of the year. We don't have to get into debt. We look at our Acorns account. Oh, look, we got an extra $2,000. Bam. And we
Sort
don't
of a
have to worry
forced
about
savings plan. And
it.
it's
It
sort
is
of
a,
tricking your brain into saving essentially. It's still your
yes,
money, but it's sort of like, all right, if I can just round up, it's not going to hurt that much right now.
right.
And we'll have some money at the end of the year. And so I think it's great to just think through ways to trick yourself into saving more and living on less. That's the key to all of this.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay, so listen, real quick, I want to ask you about the budget. Why is budget? First of all, people find it extremely hard and they find it extremely boring. What's your take on a budget?
Well, like many, I used to think budgets were for broke people and or accountants and nerds. And I was like, wait, but I've never met a broke accountant or a broke nerd. And so there's got to be something here. And I've started using words like intentional spending plan
Ooh,
that really helped me go, oh, that's what a budget is. Don't think about a budget as a restrictive tool that's going to say, no, you don't get, that's, we were trained growing up to go, that's not in the budget. And it's just this sort of easy scapegoat for not having fun. That's how most people see it. And so nobody wants to look in that financial mirror and have that level of accountability. But when you look at a budget as a permission to spend, of wow, what does a budget allow me to do? Now that's a different mentality. A budget allows me to save up for a house, to save up for a car without going into debt, to cover Christmas without stress, to know that I'm living on less than I make, to create margin, to invest and give and live, to retire early. Insert your dream here. Well, you can't do that if you're not paying attention. And the only way to pay attention is by creating a monthly budget, going, what did I make this month? What do we plan on spending? What did we actually spend? To know if you're on track for your goals. And so that's all it is. Everyone with a goal reverse engineers it to make sure that the goal happens, at least successful people. And the
Absolutely.
budget allows you to do that. We created one called Every Dollar a decade ago, and it's now one of the top budgeting apps out there. It's free in the App Store. Everyone can go download Every Dollar. And you can go to everydollar.com/George, get a 2-week free trial with all the premium features. You can check out bank connectivity, paycheck planning, financial roadmap tools to look at what's going to happen in the next 20 years. And so it's been a really helpful tool for my family to stay accountable, to communicate regularly, to stay on track for our goals. And it's sort of become our little buddy we have in our pocket on our phones wherever we go. We just track a transaction going, is this in the budget? Cool. And if you want it in the budget, put it in the budget.
Right.
Bert's fun money. If Bert wants to go out and, eat out $200 at Outback Steakhouse, just put it in the budget. And that way there's no regret and shame at the end of that experience. Although Bloomin' Onion, that'll cause some shame and regret, Bert. I'm telling you right now. It's a lot for the human body.
Yeah. I think the technical term for Bloomin' Onion is disaster pants.
Okay. That's what they call me in high school, Bert. I don't need the memories resurfacing.
So
what
is it?
Every dollar is the name.
Everydollar.com/George Kamel. We'll put this in the show notes. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, if they wanted to find out more about you, what's the best website?
Absolutely. Well, George Kamel, Kamel.com will send you to all the things. But especially if you want to reach out to me, Instagram is a great place to do that at George Kamel with a K. And my YouTube channel, we've got 3 episodes every single week. They're short, they're punchy, they're fun, they're informative, all about personal finance, breaking down the trends, helping you understand the traps, what to do, what not to do, all of that stuff, how to build wealth the right way. And you can just find that George Kamel on YouTube.
I love it. George, I'll put all these links in the show notes. Thank you so much for stopping by. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much, Bert. Have a great day.